Okay, so this week's chapter picks up with the ending of last week, where after she defeated the bandits, Asta, excited by the power that Ichika used, tried to approach her and talk to her about it, and, well, she got pissed off and gripped him up by the head. And after I got done reading this chapter, I went back and checked out the chapter where we first found out about Ki, which was actually chapter 48, and I realized that there's actually a lot of similarities between that chapter and this one. For starters, just like how Ichika grabs Asta by the head in this one, or, technically the ending of the last week's chapter, Yami also grabs Asta by the head for asking a dumb question in that chapter as well. And then after that, Yami goes on to explain exactly what Ki is and tells Asta to give it a try. And even though Asta is hesitant to do so because he doesn't have mana, Yami explains to him, well, you don't need mana to do this, so just give it a shot. And after that little bit of encouragement, Asta manages to pull off the Ki sensing technique. And I mean, that's pretty much exactly what happens in this week's chapter. Asta at first doubts that he can actually do the same kind of Ki techniques that he's taught by Ichika in this chapter because he doesn't have mana. And then after Ryu explains to him, well, you don't need mana, you just need your anti-magic to be able to do this, he gives it a shot and he pulls it off pretty much perfectly. And I mean, I think we all pretty much expected Asta to pick up on this pretty quickly because it seems like he actually is a natural at using Ki-based techniques. In fact, the only thing I could say as to why he's never been able to do something like this before is simply because he was never taught how to do it by Yami. Which, by the way, it's not like I'm blaming Yami for never teaching Asta any of these techniques, he probably never learned them himself, because he did end up leaving his country at like, what, 13, 14 years old when he watched up on the Clover Kingdom, which we know it was definitely before then, because he was definitely not 15 when he came to the Clover Kingdom, because he turned 15 in the Clover Kingdom and that's when he got his grimoire. But yeah, he probably didn't learn any of these techniques when he was over in his home country because of how young he was. He probably taught just the basics of how to sense Ki, and then when it comes to these advanced techniques, he probably just hadn't been taught them yet. Although, that being said, a lot of Yami's slashing techniques actually look very similar to the technique that Ichika uses in this chapter to demonstrate Ki manipulation to Asta, which I believe is called Heavenly Severance. Because the way Tabata draws Ichika using this technique is actually very similar to the way the anime actually displays Yami using all of his dark cloaked slashes. So maybe it might be that Yami actually does know how to do this Ki manipulation technique, it's just that he figured out subconsciously and applied it to his magic and doesn't realize he's actually doing it. Which, if that actually is the case, then this is actually a great thing for Yami when it comes to him getting a power up in this arc, because if he actually has been subconsciously doing it this entire time without knowing what the actual technique is, then once he actually meets Ichika again and she shows him this ability because she most likely will become to the Clover Kingdom at some point, then once he sees her doing this, he'll instantly realize, oh hey, I can do that too, and boom, he'll instantly have a power up and surpass his limits. But yeah, like I said, there actually are a lot of similarities between this chapter and chapter 48, and I guess the reason why Tabata did that is because chapter 48, the first chapter where Asta learns about Ki, he was being taught by Yami, and now in this chapter, he's being taught by Yami's little sister, so he kind of wanted to throw a callback to that chapter by having it be very similar to this one. Anyway, there's one thing I want to kind of clear up because I've seen a lot of fans be confused after reading this chapter. Asta is not learning Ki magic. He's not being taught that by Reason 7. Magic of any kind requires Yoryoku or mana, which is something that Asta was born without because of his mutation. Ki is a completely different source of energy that any living and non-living thing can have. What Asta's being taught is how to use his Ki to manipulate and boost his anti-magic so he doesn't have to solely rely on his swords anymore, because before this, he had to use his anti-magic by solely channeling them through his swords, and if he didn't have his swords, then he couldn't do anything. But now, after this chapter, he's able to emit his anti-magic through his body without having to rely on them. It's kind of like how when he's in his Devil Union, he's emitting a lot of anti-magic around him, so it's just naturally coming out of his body. It's something like that, but with him having more control over it. Although, that being said, it's not like after Asta's done his training, he's just going to suddenly stop using his swords, because at the end of the day, Asta is a swordsman. He's most likely going to continue fighting with them and just transfer the training he gets from the Reason 7 onto his sword techniques. But this just means that if he for some reason can't use his swords or loses them, he still has a way to fight besides just simple punches and kicks. We get to see Asta reunite with Lieb in this chapter, and it's actually kind of a cute scene where Asta is very excited to be back with him because he was lonely, and even though Lieb is very hesitant to do it so, he does admit that he was also lonely too being away from Asta. Oh, and we also see that Lieb has the same scar on his chest as Asta does, and I'm not sure if that's because the two of them were in their double union when they're attacked, and any damage done to Asta's physical body also transfers to Lieb when they're in that state, or if it actually is because of Lucius' soul magic. Then we get to meet Ryu's friend who healed both Asta and Lieb, and his name is Fumito, and we don't actually get any clarification on exactly what his healing Yojutsu is, but we do see these flying fish in his home, and Lieb actually ends up getting spit out one of them, so I'm guessing that actually has something to do with his abilities, but again, there's no clarification on exactly what that is. And I'm trying to think if that actually has something to do with it, like if he actually had the fish absorb or swallow them and then it heals them while they're inside of them. How would that work for Asta? I mean, I guess he would have to have like a giant fish that he can use to swallow Asta and heal him, and I don't know. But what I do know is that Fumito also has black hair like every single other person we've met so far in this country. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because in the very beginning of the chapter, when they're actually still in the town square after defeating the bandits, all the civilians around him realize that Asta has white hair, and they immediately pick him out to be a foreigner because of that. And this is when it clicked in my head that every single person in the country so far that we've met all have black hair, including Yami. So that tells me that that's actually a trait of the Land of the Sun. Everyone born there has black hair. Then we get to the really depressing part of the chapter, because while they're all sitting down and having a meal, Asta starts to panic about wanting to get back to the Clover Kingdom as quickly as possible, and Ryu tells him, hey listen man, if you go back now, you're just going to end up dying because you're not strong enough as you are right now to beat Lucius. You have a few days before he actually does anything. Learn some new techniques while you're here, and then we'll send you back. But Asta doesn't want to do it. He just wants to go back as quickly as possible because he wants to save Sister Lily. And during the scene where we see Asta panicking, we really get to see exactly how depressed and down in the dumps he actually is right now, because throughout his inner monologue and his dialogue with everyone else, we find out that he's thinking because he lost and he couldn't protect Sister Lily, the person probably the most important to him, he thinks all the training he went through was for nothing and that he was actually never strong to begin with. Which is really crazy that he's thinking this when you look back at all the extremely powerful characters that Asta's defeated throughout the series. But because he's traumatized and he failed to do the thing that he wanted to do the most, protect the person the most important to him, he just thinks, well, all that hard work and effort I put in was for nothing because it ended up not resulting to anything. And man, it's hard seeing Asta be this down on himself because usually Asta's a character that's actually usually lifting everyone else up when they're this depressed. And I said in my spoiler video, but even back when he actually lost the ability to use his arms, everyone else in the Black Bulls were more depressed than he was. He just said, fuck it, if I can't use my arms anymore, then I'm just gonna use my mouth to swing my sword and fight that way. We really haven't seen Asta feel this powerless since like the very first chapter when Yuno almost died. So yeah, as a huge Asta fan, because he actually is my favorite character from the series, it was actually very hard to see him be this down on himself in this chapter. But Ichika, once again showing that she truly is Yami's younger sister, saves the day by jumping in and slapping the shit out of Asta to get him to calm down. And she basically tells him, hey listen, I don't care what your problems are, but you wanting to go back to your home country and basically just rushing to death is a complete disrespect to both Ryu and Fumito who took their time to try to save you. And the reason why they saved you is because they believe in your potential. So you need to shut up and just listen to what they say, otherwise I'll kill you myself. And then after that scene, we cut to them in this bamboo forest and we see Ichika teaching Asta the heavily severance technique. And when she does it, we see her cut the bamboo in front of her clean down the middle using her dark Yurioku. Now Asta ends up doing the same thing, but there's actually a big difference between the two of them. What she did was use her dark energy to basically cut it in half. But when Asta did it, the anti-magic in his body basically corroded the inside of the bamboo in half straight out the middle. And the reason why that happened is because we find out from Ryuzen that the bamboo in front of them actually grows using Yurioku, which means that it will never wither. But what Asta's anti-magic did was wither the Yurioku inside of it, causing it to break in half. Which after seeing that immediately had me thinking, and I don't think Tabata's going to do this because if he does, then Asta's just going to be stupidly broken, but it had me thinking, does this mean that now Asta using the heavily severance technique could actually shoot his anti-magic into somebody's body and just erase their mana? I mean, of course it's not going to be gone permanently, it will naturally recover over time, but if he could do something like that, then it would be pretty easy for him to take down Lucius just by using his anti-magic to just erase all the mana inside of him. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for me for this review. The official translation should be out tomorrow, so if there's any big differences between that translation and this one, I'll definitely cover it in a video. But that's it for the video guys, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. If you did, please drop me a like and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. And check out some of the other videos on the channel. Anyway, that's it, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.